If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today because we bring the discussion with the sources.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
The storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Chris Hanna, the deaf kid, is actually doing the intro this time instead of Mr. Tanner over there in the tiny little box on my screen. But I just wanted to start it off because I found a machine on the internet that makes airplanes and shoots them at people. This is amazing, and that's how we wanted to start the show tonight. So this is our 164th show, and we are coming to you from the cold. I don't know. Is it powerless? It's not too powerless out in Zealand on your end. It's been spotty and on and off out here. They declared Grand Rapids a state of emergency because of the ice storms and stuff. It's been pretty hectic the last week.
Yeah, we have power over here, but I live really close to the power company, so I don't know what to tell you. Like, we don't lose power very often.
You just go outside, throw a wire over the fence, and just hit something, starts pulling in some juice.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. We buried our lines last year, so
yeah, that was what Kentwood does. I'm in Kentwood. It's just southeast of Grand Rapids. It's the city is known for being incredibly high in the tax bracket. Like, their property tax are insane. But one thing that they do is they have really good utilities, meaning that they require any new construction to have underground facilities. And so it's harder to work on, it's harder to do repairs. When things go bad, it takes a lot of work. You tear up a lot of concrete. But when the weather goes AWOL and trees start falling down, I don't lose power for more than an hour or two. Because if anything lands in the power station, but other than that, I really, I enjoy my social safety net for my corporate city. So like Kentwood has got a lot of real big corporations that funnel a lot of money in. But I mean, we're known as it's Rentwood. There's a whole bunch of personal real estate taxes that go in to feed the city. And it was listed, one of the zip codes real close to where I live was listed as the number one growing or number one real estate zip code in the country last year. So like, there's some weird things going on here, and I don't know. I like it, man. I like not having to worry about having to go buy a generator because every generator in the city is gone right now. There are none. Every hardware store I've been to says there's signs on the doors. We don't have any. Don't even ask. And there's some grumpy person who's going to get asked anyways because that's what people do when their house is frozen.
They do, and that's the funny thing is lots of people cannot stand that because if you're living in the cold, right,
you don't put a 55-gallon drum in your living room and start it on fire to heat your house and keep the pipes from freezing. Most people don't, but if it came down to it, I would.
Yeah, I would too if that's what you had to do. I mean, that's the funny thing is exactly. That's exactly how everybody sees things, and without being able to currently assess where you're at in your community, you have no way of understanding how it affects those around you. And so, like, for us, the majority of Zealand does not lose power very often. And Zealand has made it an initiative to have the power lines buried over the next 2 years. We did it early because of the neighbors, the addition, and everything. But they're making it this big initiative to try and figure out how do we get it to the point where everybody else does it. And that's just the way we need to go. Like, our society should go, hey, how do we figure out how to do this for everybody? Because it would mean a lot less power interruptions.
Yeah, the people with the money can make that initial investment, and the long-term payout is significant and high. Like investing in schools, there's like a $7 to every dollar return on your investment if you invest in the minds of the young children and help them grow to be functioning, productive adults in the future that innovate and have all kinds of abilities. Like this isn't complicated economics or sociology and any of that kind of stuff. So I mean, it makes sense, and I'm hoping that almost anyone that we know locally that lives in the area, that they have a nice warm house that they're in, and if they don't, just feel free to put a message into it. We'll share something. Anyone that can help you guys out. I mean, it's scary when it's cold. It'd be different if you use your power in the summer and you just kind of keep the windows open. You can still sleep. There's no danger. But I mean, it's scary when it's cold. If you got water in your pipes and something breaks, you could lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in the house. And you're talking insurance claims and stuff. So if anyone else out there is looking for help, just post on there. Maybe we can help you find something. But other than that, that's really been the excitement, because we're in this weird, I don't know, it's kind of like a post New Year's haze where everything's kind of fuzzy, and we're looking at kind of what the new year's going to be bringing us. And I'm not really sure where I'm going. My company's changing. I'm going to be doing things that are going to be all over the place. You're doing all kinds of stuff with your company. So, I mean, it's just after all the holidays are over and February starts up and people are just like, oh, what happened to January? I'm so hungover. Oh my God. That's just kind of how it feels right now. And so I'm excited for the spring, basically. Like usually at this point of the year, if I don't snowboard or ski or do anything like that anymore, which I don't because my kids are always sick, it seems that I literally can't snowboard and do any outdoor snow activities. So without snowboarding and skiing and snow fun, I have no use for snow, and I want it to go away, and I want to plant my garden. That's kind of how I've been feeling this week.
Well, you can't plant your garden this early, my friend.
I know, because I'm waiting for the rest of global warming to hit, and then I can plant in February.
All right, Trump. Because at this point, Trump would tell you, it's so cold out. It's so cold out, guys, that global warming doesn't exist, because if it weren't this cold out, we wouldn't have global warming, man. That's how he thinks.
I saw the best meme I've seen. It was a picture of the Titanic, and they said that someone at the far end of the Titanic was way up in the air, and they're like, what are you talking about? If we're sinking, why are we so high up in the air? And that's the best thing I've seen, because it's the whole point. It's like the direct opposite direction of global warming. It's like, if it's going to get so hot, why is it so cold? So it's like, because the other end of the ship is way the heck up in the air, and you're just not paying attention to that part of it.
Exactly. And I posted that. Ironically, I posted that same one on my Facebook page. Because
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's illogical how people understand climate change. And yes, we have not fulfilled our promise of doing the climate change episode. It is coming in the next month. Give us a few episodes to flush it out. But
yeah, we just need a little more time. It's hard to do that research.
Yeah. But the problem is people don't understand what the difference between weather and climate change are. And we actually have a guest coming on talking about critical thinking in the next couple of episodes that is going to essentially centricate the same ideology that says, hey, if you don't understand the difference between weather and climate change, maybe you shouldn't be in government. I don't know. Question mark. I'm sorry, cool. But it is what it is.
That'll be fun. I mean, having anyone that can help us just kind of do a little bit more critical thinking and find evidence-based reality is definitely going to help on that one. But in all reality, what it comes down to is just accepting, the whole idea of like there's a fallacy of what was it? The expertise fallacy. What's the appeal to authority when it's not an authority on the topic? But the thing is that all of these appeals to authority are actually to the authorities in that area. So that would be the thing. Like it'd be like if you're talking to Dr. Oz and his only degree was like he got a dental technician degree or something. Like he's not a doctor, and respecting his medical opinion on some weird thing. Like this is all hypothetical, by the way. I don't know what Dr. Oz's stuff is, but I know that he supports homeopathic medicine, so he can't be that intelligent. But like basically taking an authority who's not an authority in that area, and like what the issue is here is that all the people that are calling the climate change thing real is our appeals to an authority are actually the authorities on the area. And it's like I wish people would give science a little bit more of a leg to stand on than they give it now. And so like we'll see. We want to do a segment that'll help people push some real evidence and information into the limelight to help share stuff as to why the scientists say, as opposed to simply saying the scientists say, because it does make a difference whether or not you understand, even in a layperson's or a 10,000 foot view understanding of what it means, because you need to be able to answer the questions. If someone says something and you say, well, 97% of the scientists agree in this thing, and then they ask you a specific question, you have no idea, because you're basically just saying that the scientists know, I know nothing, therefore I'm just going to trust the scientists blindly. There is an issue with that. You do need to learn why, and this is something that maybe we can put together a little thing as to why. So like weird tie-in, why the machine that we linked in the intro here that can make airplanes is amazing. It's because it's amazing. I've seen a couple of these things here and there, and I just thought it was really cool. And Chris was like, you should definitely mention that in the intro, and I couldn't help it, so I took over. I love these kinds of engineering things. There's a group I'm in, engineering porn, and it's the good kind of porn.
Whoa.
It's awesome,
Whoa,
awesome
hold
machines.
on. You're
awesome
in an
machines.
awesome porn group? Is that what you're saying?
I'm in an awesome engineering porn group, and we do things like measure and polish.
It doesn't work, man. There's nothing sexual about measuring and polishing. No,
not at all.
No one has ever come to me and said, I want to measure and polish your dick. And it's like, okay, that sounds good.
We're going to get our measuring tools out, and we're going to start measuring in increments of a thousandth of an inch, microns. This is a good time. We're really, really going to get into this.
That sounds awful. That sounds like the biggest turnoff in podcast history.
It's not supposed to be a turn on. It's supposed to be engineering, which usually is a turn off for most people.
Okay, exactly. You see, there you go. How your wife found you is beyond me.
You got me there. Well, I'm not always a nerd. Just most of the time.
Just most of the time.
Yeah, I don't.
In the bedroom, do you like tell your wife, "Hey, would you like to know the microns between everything?"
You want to test the friction constant?
There you go.
Of personal lubricants.
Is that a conversation that happens?
No. Why would that be a good thing? That's kind of like saying, like, hold on, honey, let me put on this latex glove. It's going to be fun. Like, there's nothing interesting there. No, like the engineering porn group that I'm in on Facebook and on Reddit. It's like they'll talk about stuff that's really. So it's kind of like the History Channel's old show Modern Marvels, where they used to do really cool stuff, or How It Works on the Discovery Channel, where they show all of the stuff on how the stuff works. And so like one of them that just comes to mind is there's a gear basically that's, I think it's like 60 feet in diameter. They use it for turning like turbines and things and opening doors and closing doors and giant dams. This gear is so big that the machine that they have to put it on, it has to do whole gear all at once.
On. How big is it?
Like I said, 60 something feet in diameter. That's just insane. The machine has to obviously be bigger than that. So I don't know. It's just really cool machining things that like you kind of need to know what's going on, but you also don't. Like you can just see it and think it's sweet. And like I see a little thing like an airplane thing. Like you think of all the folds that you need to do on how something works on an airplane, and then you imagine just feeding it into the rollers of a printer and having, you know, guides and guards in the way that fold each sheet as it needs to be folded. And at the very end, there's a high speed wheel that shoots the paper out, and you get a flying airplane at the end of it. I love that kind of stuff. So like, you can anyone's interested, we got a link included in the description. You can see where someone feeding a piece of paper in one end and an airplane shooting out the other.
Yeah, and I would agree with you because, you know, if you think about it, right, you know, like my kids and I have sat around and talked about paper airplanes before. It's a conversation that has happened at the dinner table.
I got this book of like how to fold paper airplanes. Well, not for me, it was my daughter's, but guess who plays with it more?
You. But hey, it's a good conversation starter for when she's a little bit older. And the best part is you can create a competition out of it, and then when she has a better paper airplane than you or can fold it better, you can be like, hey, you're awesome, you're amazing, and you're better than me.
Yeah, we have contests to see who can throw it furthest. It's awesome.
Yeah. And see,
your
that's
kids
the
are
best
doing the same kind of thing, or what?
Well, no, we've never technically had a paper airplane contest, but my son was actually involved in a science competition where they took different ideas and had to actually build the outcome that happened. And I don't
like it make a better airplane.
Yeah, my son chose to do this like puzzle thing where it released a ball and had to go on a track to release something else. And him and like 3 other kids and their father, who was a woodworker, built this thing. And it's actually really cool. Like, in fairness, like, it's like, I've told them before, I was like, this is one of the things that I'm extremely proud of you for, because they took the whole science concept, and it's great, for Christ's sake, you know, and they took all these things and applied them to mechanics and created something and entered it in a contest, and they won like second place. You know, like, yeah, awesome. Okay, fine, you didn't get top place, but for Christ's sake, you hit second place. This is pretty cool, man.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
Yeah, like, those are the type of things. Like, I tried to get my son into robotics, and he didn't want to do it. And I was like, that's fine.
The Lego robotics are so cool.
And but that's the idea, is like, now I just got to figure out, okay, you guys, my sons are past that point. How do I get my daughters to this? You know, and in fairness, my daughters play Legos all the time, and it's not because of the Lego movie, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but you know, like, it's because they love Legos, because Legos embodies the idea that you can have a preset fact sheet that you build, or you can use your imagination and do whatever you want with it. And it's funny because my daughters will come down sometimes and be like, see this thing I built? And you're like, what is it? And they're like, how do you not recognize this, Dad? Like, I'm sorry. What is it? And they're like, oh, it's the Batmobile. Oh, okay. But, you know, the idea that they can build what they want, and in their mind it is what it is amazing, because it's the pre-facet to them taking their knowledge and building it on a foundation of, what do I do with what I know in my creativity? And if we can't teach children that creativity is some of the core essences to science and how you can expand this science field, then we're failing as parents. We just
my 3-year-old and I built a tower all the way to the drop ceiling in my basement tonight. 7.5 feet. We created a base that was bigger and got up to a certain point and made it narrower, then a little bit narrower, and like we literally like had to create a self-sustaining pyramid, a really narrow one because I don't have that many Lego blocks. But we got it all the way up to the ceiling, and I picked her up by her knees because I couldn't reach high enough. We put a tiny little flower at the very top of it, and like that was her tower. She always liked to create towers, and so like, I mean, just a skinny little thing, but like teaching her the understanding of like basics. Like if she did just a single skinny strand all the way up, it would tip over. So you need a little more structural integrity. You need to increase the floor print. The footprint of the once you get to a certain height, then you also need to do it again because it's also becomes less structurally integral, and so it's just a whole bunch of fun things that happen there on that, and the airplane stuff, like all that stuff is just an absolute blast. And so what you were saying that your daughters were building Legos or whatever, and like the thing that always got me with Legos is like you have the design, like you buy the thing that has the shape with the instructions that tell you how to do all that. You build the thing once, and then I literally would probably never build it again. It would be like, awesome, I made the thing, the instructions, I did it, it was great. And then for the rest of the time having it, like I would try to build something similar or cool, but like my own thing. And I don't know, it's a really important thing to do, is like to give you like your first I guess tools, like the erector sets and things like that. When I was younger, like I would get my first set of tools. Like Legos is also, even more simple, but like you could just the first set of things you can build something with. And like I'm afraid that we'll lose a little bit of that with the dependence on screens, because it really is important to kind of have a physical understanding of creation and making things versus just going purely to the software end of stuff, because there's a need for that in our society. I mean, there's always going to be need for welders and machinists and stuff like that. And until our robot, what are the guys that, I think is it DARPA? I can't remember the company that's the guys that are making those hopping little quadrupeds, the like horses or whatever that hop up and down hills and everything. I don't know. Once those robots are built up to the point where they can start doing manual labor and doing everything for us, then we won't quite need the ability to weld and be machinist and repair things. But until that point, man, we're going to need to be able to innovate, because I was listening to an interview with Boeing, and they were saying that some of the stuff that they're doing is really innovative, but they're losing the ability to do it in the U.S. partially because everybody is just going into software instead of hardware. Like nobody makes these things; they just do the software interfaces that are on the thing. But someone has to make the thing, otherwise the software is meaningless. And so, like, it's kind of my world is like trying to make that interesting again.
And that's fair. And like I encourage my kids, have fun, do what you want with the Legos. If you don't build the original one, I mean, we used to build it, and it's kind of funny after nowadays. I don't think they build their Lego sets. I think they just make whatever they want, and they don't care.
They don't even like the first when they get it, build the one that's on the picture.
No, my daughters literally go, "How can I make this better?" That's literally
that's cool.
I think the first thought that goes through their mind.
And she looks at the Lego engineer and she's like, no.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's kind of funny because, like I bought them this Ninjago set, right? And
those things are so like specialty form though. Like,
they are. Well, but so they built a dragon, and then they modify the dragon to have more amazing things on it, and then they use the dragon to kill other things. So it's like, okay, all right. And I guess I can relate to that because, like when you and I were growing up in the 90s, right? The Legos that we got you could get a Blackbeard set, but it wasn't Blackbeard, it was just a pirate set. You could get a Lunar Landing set, but it wasn't like specialized to a movie or cinema or anything. It was just moon stuff. And
they were just starting to make those specialty pieces that look like that you could use to make like a flying saucer or something. Otherwise, it was just bricks and angles.
Exactly. And I had the ancient Egypt thing, and then I had the moon landing stuff, and I had lots of pirate stuff because I was super into pirates. Love pirates. So kind of like pirates.
Jack.
Yeah, so kind of like pirates. But like I would build these sets where I would have I'd have little houses and islands, and I had a bunk bed, and I didn't have a brother at all until I was 17. So I mean, I had an empty bunk bed underneath mine or above mine that I could put all these Lego sets. So I made these huge worlds, and my floor was blue, so that was water, right? And so I would build these pirate ships, these regular ships, these different islands, and have all the pirates interact with the local folk and create stories in my head. And my kids are doing the same thing. And it's amazing to see that the idea of Legos and what it can inspire in the imagination has translated through generations. My kids now have like princess themed stuff, and they don't care. They take the princess out of one scene and put her in another. They don't give a flying crap if, Jasmine flew a carpet. They don't care.
Yeah.
They care that Jasmine can interact with Aurora and both of them can go defeat the evil dragon or the evil queen or the evil prince. They don't care. That's all they care, is that it can. And it's funny. The best part is they have guinea pigs, and their guinea pigs interact with their Legos. So, like, sometimes it's like a South Park episode where the guinnie pigs destroy the Legos. I don't know.
That's
I don't know,
awesome.
man.
That's cool. Yeah, Legos and everything, just like kind of what they have. I've seen a couple of really cool things where they basically retire a die, one of the plastic mold injection dies, where they make all the Lego bits, and we're talking some of the highest precision plastic injection mold dies you have, because like every Lego that has ever been made has to fit into the old Legos. And so like there's a really, really high level of precision there, because you got to have some stickiness, otherwise it'll just fall apart. And so, I mean, there's a really, really tight engineering problem that Lego solved a long time ago, and they have some really, really high quality equipment. And the dies they use, I've seen they have these dies that they with any liquid fluid moving, you're going to have friction and wear. And so these hardened steel die they use to make the Lego bricks do eventually wear out, and they have these ceremonies where they retire a certain die, and like we're like 100 million Lego blocks made in this little die, and it's like when they give the police dog the final walk away, you're just like, because it's going to the scrapyard. It's not going to a nice happy place. It's just a piece of steel, and it doesn't have a soul or any kind of meaning. And so like, just like you see there's like the police dog in his final days, and it's like, well, is it his retirement day? No, this is his actual final day. They were walking him into the vet, and I'm like, oh God. It's like I see this, the Lego die, and it's like, you hear the trumpets play on its way to the foundry to melt itself down. I don't know. Like Legos did some really cool stuff, and then like they turned it into something that's got some, it's anthropomorphic. It's got some life to it. It's pretty cool.
Exactly. It's a lot cooler than trying to teach Bible in the public school.
Yuck.
I don't know. It's kind of funny. You found an article talking about teaching Bible in the public schools. And later tonight, we have an interview with Everyone's Agnostic. And we talked through my upbringing as well as Marie's upbringing and all sorts of different things. And it's kind of funny because you like posted this article and you're like, hey, we should talk about this. And it's like, oh, man, damn it. We covered this, but not this article. But we covered this logic in our interview. But then I thought, hey, let's dissect teaching the Bible in public schools, because a lot of Christians think it's a good idea, but honestly, is it really that good of an idea?
Or is it really what they think it is? That was one of the things. One of the biggest things in this article is basically saying it's like the idea from Fox and Friends. They loved the whole idea of the proposed segment of proposed legislation to incorporate Bible classes into public schools. And President Donald Trump cheered those efforts on Twitter, saying numerous states introducing Bible literacy classes, giving students the option of studying the Bible, starting to make a turn back great, is what Trump wrote. Like, first off, the article from theatlantic.com is a really nice analysis of exactly what you would be getting on that. So my favorite analogy to something that's actually happened in history is when they opened up all of the local political events, and so town halls and things like that, to invocations, where they said that you can't have any kind of invocation, and then all these states said, yes, we're going to allow invocations before, basically prayers before our meetings, and someone has to apply saying I would like to participate in this town hall meeting, in this whatever meeting, and I want to give an invocation. So once you open it up, to one group, the Christians, as would be expected, but you're also opening up to the agnostics, to the atheists, to the Satanists, to the Hindus, to the Buddhists, all of that, to Islam. And so all of that is basically what you're getting. And so they were just they didn't expect to have the diversity and the variety they were opening it for. And then obviously they got angry, because why would an atheist want to give an invocation? It's like, you don't understand. That's the whole point, is that since you opened it up, everyone gets to do it. And this is a little bit more narrow. Is basically what they're talking about is, if you allow a Bible study in schools, what are some of the very specific things that can be happening here? And one of the things they talk about is that, well, are you a Catholic or are you a Protestant? Because it says here, how would evangelical parents react when their fifth grader explains that their teacher said the Apostle Paul said misogynist things and advocated for slavery? What if the teacher decides to assign Catholic version of the Bible, which has 7 books that Protestants reject as apocryphal? Like, that is a problem that I think they're just saying, yay Christianity, yay Jesus in schools. But when you get to the specifics, all the different sects, when it comes to Christian religion, it gets very complicated. And so if you assume that each area is very homogenous, and there's absolutely no chance that the high school would have any kind of differentiation from what the local, I guess, majority belief system would be, then you're never going to have any trouble. But what if you're in an area that's got 1%, Hindu, 1% atheist, 1% Muslim, and then 6% and 46%. Like, you're gonna be running into a 50-50 headbutting match between, like this case says, the Protestants and the Catholics. What do you do there? They're both right if you want to allow the Bible in school, so the teacher gets to pick. I think that can cause some trouble. So like what they're basically saying is that when you open it up and make it general and broad and specific, you are literally you're basically planting seeds of trouble. And I really think that's a very interesting problem to have here, because Christianity is not nearly as homogenous as Islam is, with much less diversity, because they didn't have not or never did have a Reformation. The Christian religion is incredibly diverse. And I mean, this just locally would be trouble. Just in West Michigan alone, when you talk to like your upbringing, Chris, from the dealing with the Baptist end, and my family in my father's parents in the Lutheran aspect of things, but then some of the people that I've known that in the Protestant and Catholics that I've met, they would probably all disagree on what should be going on in these schools. How does that work? I just hear people yelling and arguing. But if you, at the very beginning, they get the Bible in schools, they're happy, and then they have to deal with everything afterwards. What would be better on that end? And I don't think it would be better. I think it would be bad, and they may not get what they wanted.
Yeah, and that's kind of funny because my parents put me in a private school specifically to teach the doctrine they wanted, right? It wasn't about...
Oh, that school had what they wanted and they picked it. Exactly.
And it wasn't what needed to be taught by the state. It wasn't a compromise. It was a specific worldview that they chose, right? And as we talk through this, we understand that the problem becomes is if other schools don't agree on the worldview, that's where you run into it. Like Calvinists and Protestants don't get along. They just don't. And the article reference Protestant schools. It references, moving towards a centrist religious viewpoint, if we want to call it that. And that's the funny thing. Like my children go to a somewhat Calvinist Reformed church for their Wednesday night garbage that they learn. And it's kind of funny because we can deconstruct some of the arguments when they come home. And when you look at it, the parents that they go with, they send their kids to a Baptist school, which contradicts Protestantism on 30 to 40% of the fronts. So, it's not even consistent, because in the end, a lot of religious people just want this base doctrine that says you need to believe, research for yourself what you want to believe. And that's the idea behind it. And I'm actually not super opposed to some of that. I'm opposed to the state funding that. but I'm not
Yeah.
opposed to private organizations relaying that, because if the message moves away from my message is the correct message to the message of all of our schools is do your research and believe what you find is true, I believe that we can help condition society to understand the difference behind critical thinking and delusional thinking, and actually accept the fact that, hey, let's challenge what we believe for a specific reason. And if we move towards that, I'm actually in support of private schools and these different avenues going down that method, if that's what it takes to get, future generations to move away from extreme conservatism into centrist and semi-democratic belief policies.
Yeah, they're moving towards that progressive bend. This is actually an interesting thing. In the article, Baylor University suggests that increased Bible reading can actually have a liberalizing effect, the increasing one's interest in social and economic justice, acceptance of the compatibility of religion and science, and support for the humane treatment of criminals. That is an interesting perspective, because one of the things that we always talk about is the basically the hypocrisy that you hear, be like Jesus, and when Jesus is a very socialistic and very understanding and equality driven character in a book of fiction, that he's also kind of a nice guy when it comes to certain things, but he's also got his bad sides as well. But like looking at some of his good things, these are the kinds of things that people cherry pick and say would be a good person in society. The Atlantic article says every community reads the Bible, places unequal stress on certain books or passages. So we're talking about weighing certain areas and ignoring others. And evangelicals are generally more politically conservative, where teachers in public schools might choose to emphasize the Bible's many teachings for caring for the poor, welcoming the immigrant, and the problems of material wealth. That obviously is going to piss off every MAGA hat wearing conservative parent in the book, without question. And so the article, the article basically ends with what I think is a great closing to this entire perspective: is the biblical Bible literacy. Bills are unlikely to pass in most states. But even if they do, they might soon be ruled unconstitutional. Surprisingly, thinking about that, the appeals courts have probably ruled them unconstitutional. But also the Supreme Court itself, it's got its weird conservative bend, but I don't think it's going to be going this way. But anyways, conservative Christian leaders advocate conservative Christian advocates would do well to think through the shape these classes will likely take if their efforts are successful. They might end up getting what they want, only to realize they don't want what they've got. And that's the whole point of this thing here, is they might not like what they get in the end, even though it is a religious Jesus class.
Exactly. And the idea behind how do we allow them to have their religious freedom, but help them critically think about their position, is where we need to be. Bible literacy classes are not going to take effect. If they do, you know what? It's going to be another failure for Trump, just kind of like his wall. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking with Marie from Everyone's Agnostic about hers and mine upbringing and how you should be agnostic too. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Considering how you want to help Cellar Door Skeptics, head over to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and give us a rating, because every rating helps push us in front of new listeners. And since our main goal here at Cellar Door Skeptics is to provide the most accurate information possible, we hope that more ratings will mean that more people get to hear the topics that we're presenting. We don't insist that we get a 5-star rating, but Hannah's favorite number is 5, and the more gold stars he gets, the more special he's gonna feel. So what do you say? Head on over to iTunes or Google Play, give us a rating, and help engage with Cellar Door Skeptics today.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. With me on the show is Marie from Everyone's Agnostic. Welcome to the show, Marie. So tell me a little bit about your background then.
Which one? I've got a lot of backgrounds.
Well, let's start with the reason and the desire to join Everyone's Agnostic.
I was raised Baptist like you, and got, I think around the age 13, I really started doubting everything, but I had like a really shitty self-esteem and like no trust in myself and no trust of my gut. And I think the messages that I got from religion only affirmed that I wasn't supposed to trust myself. You know, all those verses about like that your heart is deceitful and that we're wicked, wicked beings and there's nothing good about us. So
you can't do anything without God.
I know. And that our minds are just shit. Yeah. And so like, so when I'm like, you know, having doubts about if any of this is real at all, I was gaslighting myself with my own indoctrination and like never really felt super free to follow my doubts wherever they went, because it always felt like I was fucked up, like that this wasn't making sense for me because I was being attacked by demons or something like that. And so I didn't really get too far like with my doubts. And so like, but it was like a roller coaster, like from age 13 to like my early 20s, it was like really, really bad doubts followed by extreme compensatory behaviors, such as like getting involved in missions, doubling down with my church attendance, like reading the Bible more, and then feel like I was an atheist again. And so like, those years were really tumultuous and traumatic for me, as I felt like I was super fucked up and was going to go to hell, and that there was like a whole, you know, a spiritual warfare thing going on for my soul. And meanwhile, I was insulated by, you know, by all a completely Christian community, went to a Christian school and everything. So everyone around me was Christian. And so when I expressed any doubt whatsoever, it became this matter of life and death. And everyone was extremely worried about me and wanted to debate me and make me express all of my doubts and make me like account for everything that I was feeling, which was horrible. Yeah, it was not great. And eventually, like, I graduated from high school in 2000, and I had the choice, you know, you could go to college, or I was thinking about maybe moving to Mexico and being working at an orphanage, because that really appealed to me, or like the third option I was.
That's good.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, see, that's
it. I mean, it's philanthropic, it's practical. Like even if I was trying to maybe convert them when I went down there, like it's a good thing. It's a humanistic thing.
It's just a little bit, right?
It's just a little bit of bullshit.
Like, yeah,
a little bit of bull.
I'm gonna help you, but
but I need you to just give up everything that you think. And do what I tell you to do, and stop marrying or stop praying to that one lady and then pray over to this guy over here. Basically. Yeah. But, you know, and then the third option was like, then I was thinking like, you know, with all these doubts that I'm having, I really, really want to just like inundate myself in God. Like, I really just want to show God that I'm super, super serious and like just prove myself, because I really felt like I had to, given how much I was struggling. And so I decided to go to a missions training school in Mexico, because I really was very passionate about Spanish and Mexican culture and really wanted to move there and get to know more. And so that's what I ended up doing. I flew over to Mexico and went through a missionary training school through an organization called Youth with a Mission. And did that for 6 months. And it, like I said, it galvanized me and got me really excited about believing in God. And it really made me feel like I made up for my doubts by getting to know this more extreme form of God. And so I came back to Minnesota after I was done with this school, and then just like worked over the summer to like get enough money so I could just go back. It's because I decided I wanted to go back and work on at the base as a staff instead of a student this time. And so now I would be, helping out translating, because I'm bilingual in Spanish. And this was actually, I was going to return in September of 2001. And that's, when 9/11 happened. And it was during that period that I started to have doubts again. And then fucking 9/11 happened. And here I had this ticket in my hand to go to Mexico, and I didn't even believe in God. And I didn't know what to do. And again, such low self-esteem and disregard for my intuition, my logic, and my reasoning, and my ability to think critically. And so I was like, well, you know what? If God's real, I'm gonna find him in Mexico, because I'm gonna find him in this missionary school. And so, as an atheist, I flew to mission school in Mexico and worked on staff.
Jeez. So how did you hide it then? I mean,
I didn't. Well, for the most part, I didn't. I told the director as soon as I got there.
Did he not care?
Not really, no. My personal belief is that he didn't care, mostly because I was bilingual.
Okay, and that makes it. So he sacrificed. Well, and I guess I'll back up. Normally, I would say he sacrificed, his morals, his etiquette, having an atheist on staff. But at some point, though, if you look at the higher level, right, of the Christian second, we can remove some of the parts of negativity that of the indoctrination side, and we could cut that away. To some extent, though, his goal is if God is real, right, he's going to work through an atheist to minister to all these people. Yeah,
basically, yeah.
And that's like the illusion of religion to me, right? Is God can't be the bad guy to some extent, because if it doesn't work, he can blame you as an atheist. He can say, well, God didn't approve me using you as an atheist. And if you do good and all these people come to God, he can say God can work through anybody. Why don't you become part of, our belief system? It's insane.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't have good thoughts about that guy. And I feel like he just kept me around as a resource and didn't really care about me. And so he's like, that's fine. You're going to, if you're going to find God anywhere, you'll find him here. Stay around. We just won't give you any positions of spiritual authority, whatever the fuck that means. And so I was like, okay, cool. 'Cause I'm not there. Regardless, they were still unable to find someone to replace me as a small group leader, so I led a small group as an atheist. And then, so the first 3 months of the school, the students go through theory, so they just have classes, like 3 hours of classes in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they typically will drive out to some ghetto part of Mexico and preach or do dramas about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I supported that. I translated that for those 3 months. I translated during the classes. And then the latter 3 months of the 6-month training is spent going on what is called an outreach, where you go wherever God tells you to go, and God gives you 3 options.
So he gives you options, but you can go wherever you want. Got it.
Yeah. Because the base decides where they're going to go that year, and then you just have to ask God where God wants you to go, and then you need to help figure out how the fuck you're going to get that money, which usually involves badgering any of your white earth or first world friends at home, and so anyway, I told them I didn't want to go on an outreach, because it's just a bit extreme to be sending an atheist out on a 3-month-long outreach. But they needed a bilingual person. So off I went.
So, all right. So I'm going to stop right there. I have to ask.
Yeah.
So if it's a small group, you're unsupervised. They sent you there because they're that desperate. How many people did you instill doubts into? And do you know if any of them have ever deconverted at a later date?
So that's a good question. I had 2 girls that were in my small group, and I was not out to them.
Oh, okay.
I was only out to a select group of people, and percentage-wise, it was typically just other staff. I did not out myself to students to continue the facade. So they didn't know until one of them found out much later during the outreach, because she went on the same outreach with me. But I would say that I didn't instill any doubts in them, because I don't feel that I engaged in that conversation with them.
And see, so maybe the environment is different. And for me, it's, I guess I'm just kind of I'm kind of an asshole. So like, I just sometimes can't not give people my opinion. Probably why, I like doing the podcast thing, because it's my vent, for the week. Right. But did God just not come up in casual conversation? Did you all just go do your missions work, and then you're like, oh, we hit our 8 hours for the day, so we're gonna kick it over here at the cantina?
No, like our small group. I'm trying to remember, because now it's been like 18 years ago. Shit, and I would be happy to have it even further back in the past, but I'm trying to remember, and I think like I probably just led them in like questions. Like maybe we like went over some stuff together, like in the Bible. It was like a study group. And so like I think I had some kind of a guidance to go with, and just kind of had them go through that. Otherwise, like we would just go out and do things together as like a bonding experience. And so, if there was talk about God, I just faked it.
Yeah. Well, and that I don't know how else you would get through that. So I could see where you're going. I can see how it just doesn't come up. And kudos to you to some extent. I mean, you were able to not push your beliefs into other people's throats, even though technically that's what you were training people to do.
Yeah.
You're the better person.
To me, I didn't do what they did. I don't know. That's an interesting perspective on my story, because like I look back on it and I don't feel like that at all. Like, I mean, not to say that I did push my beliefs on anyone. I certainly didn't, but that was mostly because I hated myself and thought that I was fucked up. And so I didn't see any point in trying to convince someone else, because I saw it as a fault in myself. And so why the hell would I want to go around trying to convince people who are clearly better than me to consider what I was fighting with? Like, it was all of these doubts that I went through were experienced as extremely traumatic. They were never experienced as empowering or exciting or anything. It was terrible. It was a horrible experience. And that had a lot to do with how I saw myself. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you feel, and I guess this is just now as an outside perspective, right? Do you feel that it was your church specifically or religion, or do you feel it's partially as well because you were a woman in an ultra-conservative church?
Yeah, I mean, this is a question that I don't think there is an answer for, because everything has everything to do with it. And there's a good discussion to be had about each one of those elements that contribute to it, because I would be lying to myself if I didn't say that to an extent, this is who I am, that at least possibly it's a hypothesis that I'm just like a really neurotic person. I have generalized anxiety disorder. In the past, I've had a panic disorder, an eating disorder. And so I'm just kind of like a neurotic person. And I grew up in a family that didn't understand the nuances of psychology and therapy and stuff. And so signs that were there were not noticed and were not treated. So like lack of knowledge around psychology was a contributing factor. Genetics is a contributing factor. The fact that my parents are just so different personality-wise to me is a contributing factor, in that I didn't have anyone who could relate to me and tell me and talk to me about emotions and emotion regulation and like self-soothing or any of those kinds of things.
Wow.
And then of course, then you contribute, and then you consider religion just in a very general way, and what the kind of religion that I was raised in tells me about my value just as a person in and of itself. And then you can even drill down further into what that religion says about me as a woman. And that's terrible, horrible things. And then, yeah, so it's like there's so many parts that contribute to it. And I would never try to narrow it down and just say like it's all religion's fault, because I don't think it is. And so there's people who have found a balance and a happiness and a peace with what they believe in. And it's hard for me to say to them, yeah, your beliefs are shit. You know, like,
no, thank you.
I mean, they are, but like, I don't want to be that atheist. I don't think that doesn't feel authentic for me to say. I can see where other people are coming from when they say stuff like that, but that's not a place where I'm at with reflecting on religion. But yeah, to answer your question, it's a very blended evolution towards my experiences and like the low self-esteem and shit. And I mean, don't even get me started on purity culture, but definitely get me started on purity culture, because that is a fucking mess.
It is. You know what's scary for me? What's scary, right? I live obviously in West Michigan, right? And we're pretty conservative over here. You know, now I don't know exactly where you are in the state that you're in.
I'm in the Twin Cities.
You're
in
Twin Cities.
Minneapolis.
Okay. So I don't know how ultra conservative it is there.
Not very.
You know, in where we live, you know, it's weird because 80% of my neighbors are going to one or two churches in this neighborhood. You know, we live in a smaller community, like 8,000, and it's definitely not a very diverse community.
Yeah.
There's more diversity, I think, in religion than in race, sadly.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it's weird because one of our neighbors, her daughter is the same age as mine. I have 4 kids, by the way.
Wow.
Yes, one from a previous marriage. My wife has one from a previous marriage, and then we have 2 together.
Oh, okay.
And my daughters are 10 and 7, and they started about a year and a half ago. And the neighbor came over and wanted to take them to church, take them to their Wednesday night cadets, basically. And my immediate reaction is like, excuse me, no fucking way. You know, like you want to come into my house? I'll teach your kids about, you know, why they should stop supporting the GOP, and, you know, why every time you say, oh, don't worry, honey, you can have it your way, that's like you're being subservient for no fucking reason because your religion tells you.
Yeah.
But instead of being, you know, anyway, so instead of being, you know, super forceful, it's like, well, I went over and explained who I was. I was like, hey, by the way, I'm an atheist. My kids are not indoctrinated. They can do whatever they want. And so I'm okay, but I have 2 rules. One, if your church preaches hellfire and brimstone, I'm out, period.
Yeah.
No questions asked. And then I said the other one is if you start treating them or teaching them devaluing beliefs. Now, some of it subservient nature comes with it.
Yeah.
But I was always very worried that they are going to push that purity culture. They're going to try and change all of the things we instill. You know, I mean, we talk about, you know, sex positivity in the house, you know.
Oh, that's amazing. And
it's just hard to see them go into a culture that I know how I grew up. You know, my mom, when I was 11, my mom told me if I masturbated, that I'm going to hell. And there's different levels of hell for every time you masturbate. Now,
oh my God,
I'm not going to tell you it stopped me, but
see, that's the difference between you and me.
You know, exactly. And that's, you know, and that's a sad thing. Purity culture for boys, I think, is different than purity culture for women.
Yep. Yeah, that's where I'll agree with you when you're trying to draw that line between the experience of women and men in religion. It is very blatant when you come to the sexual stuff. Very, very different experiences.
Yeah. And so you were telling us, you know, not to get you started on purity culture.
Hey, I'll get started.
So let's have a conversation, I guess. That's weird to say about purity culture. That's just a weird thing to say, I think. Anyway,
it needs to be talked about. Absolutely.
Let's talk about purity culture and how we should wipe it off the face of the earth.
Yeah, it's bullshit. It's slut shaming. It's body shaming. It's sex shaming. It's bullshit. Like, it just drives me fucking nuts because, like, I bought into it, dude. Like, I like I said, it was all a formula with lots of different variables, but like I had such low self-esteem and I had crushes on literally every boy that I ever met. And no boys had crushes on me. And I was just like this super hyper talkative, energetic kid that boys just weren't into because they wanted the cute, coquettish girl with like I don't know, perfect body who played sports or shit. And I don't fucking know. Nobody liked me, and I couldn't figure out why, and I felt horrible about myself. And so when True Love Waits or like I Kiss Dating Goodbye comes around the corner and tells me that that Jesus is my what do we call it, the bridegroom or whatever. Ugh. Like that's yeah, I know. Jesus is the lover of my soul. Like all of a sudden it was like, I don't need a boyfriend. I've got Jesus. Like it filled, pun intended, it filled that hole in my life. Like that, I was just like, I just felt so empty and unloved and just like the message that Jesus loved me and could fulfill that desire in me to an extent. And that he loved me unconditionally. And that moreover, he was like my matchmaker. Like that was another message. Like, don't worry about it. Jesus has the mate for you in mind, and you just keep praying and you're going to find your mate. And so all of a sudden I was just like, I don't even fucking care about boys anymore, even though I totally did. But I was like, I even I made a drawing and I put it up on my wall, and it said that, something like, I don't need a boyfriend. Jesus is my boyfriend, or something like that. Like, it's just very disturbing.
Did you have a picture of Jesus holding your hand?
Probably.
Was he taller than you?
Probably. I do like taller men.
It's rapey then.
It's not rapey if he's taller than me. That's not rapey.
Well, if you were a 13-year-old...
I was very much consenting to Jesus loving me. Very much.
So we could get into that. I don't think you can consent at 13.
Let's talk about Mary for one. She couldn't consent to God fucking her.
No.
There's a power dynamic there that cannot be fucking like. There's just no way. God raped Mary.
Yeah,
and this is not a new idea. I got this from Dr. Eric Sprankle, who's like fucking amazing. We just had him on our show.
Really? So I've never heard that. I guess I never until you said you had a picture of Jesus on your wall, and then I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, what do teenagers put on their walls? Well, they like to usually put like half-clad individuals on there, and I'm not a woman, so I don't know what women put on their walls, I guess, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we put pictures of like singers and stuff.
Okay, so there you go. And then I see you putting a picture of Jesus on, and then my mind immediately went to rape. Like all of a sudden it's like,
really?
Oh, this is like Me Too movement right here. Like we need to out Jesus. We need to have like a Me Too Jesus. Jesus did it too, hashtag, or something like that.
I mean, to an extent, like the messages that I received were all about taking away my autonomy and shaming every natural biological feeling in my human body. So yeah, I do feel extremely traumatized by that. And it's not like you just deconvert and it's like whammo bammo, let's fuck anyone that I want to, and I have no hangups anymore. It's like that shit's like indoctrinated into you at such a young age. It can be extremely difficult to purge. And I think that's where at least I've noticed, and this could be just anecdotal, but I've noticed the difference then between those identifying as men and those identifying as women, that the women, it's a lot harder for them to shake off, and the men, it is less difficult for them to shake off, with exceptions, of course. Mm-hmm. But because men are, you got messages that you got, but I imagine you also got some messages like boys will be boys.
Oh yeah.
And and women, we're just supposed to be pure. We're responsible for your sexuality, for your lust. We need to cover our bodies to not cause you to stumble. And so from day one, we are taking responsibility for men and for their behaviors. And then men don't have to take any responsibility. They're fed, patriarchal lies and misogynist bullshit, and are raised in a culture of toxic masculinity. And it's fucked up. And I think the most damaging thing I see in men from being raised in our culture is that toxic masculinity. And then for women, well, God, I don't want to go around like rating how bad things are, but like, these are the things that I'm the most pissed off about anyway. But then women, we have this like Madonna horror, complex thing to figure out. Like, how do you like sex without men wanting to rape you? Like, like how do you go about your life doing what you want to do with your body without men objectifying you and assuming things about you? And it's not just Christian culture. Like, this is American culture. There's a lot of sex, slut shaming, sex shaming, stuff going on that I think is just well embedded from religion, and I fucking hate it, and I want it all burned to the ground.
Yeah, and I think you have a really good point there, because that's kind of, we go back to a little bit earlier, right? And we talk about, what's the difference in how I was raised and you were raised. I feel that religion pushed the male dominant culture, right? It was an excuse for men to try and remain in power.
Yeah. And like, this brings me to another thing. And I don't know if you've ever heard this show before, but it's a podcast called Sunday School Dropouts. And I'm sure the premise isn't anything new, but it's this couple that reads the Bible, and they kind of hash through it in each episode. And it's been like so refreshing to listen to, because one's a former Christian, one's a Jew, or half Jew, sort of Jew, he said. He's a non-believing sort of Jew is what he calls himself. But they go through the Bible, and that's kind of something I've wanted to do since I deconverted, like to just like open it up and just rip it to shreds and be like, this is full of shit. I can see it now. But whenever I open it up, better. I would feel better. That was my hope. That I would feel better, that the gaslighting that's just like ingrained in my head would release me, finally fucking release me. But like, anytime I open up the Bible, I just like want to throw up and like just curl up in a ball, and it just screams to me of trauma, like that kind of a response. And so I haven't felt like it's something I could do. And like, so listening to this show, and I'm sure there's been many shows similar to this. But this is just the one that I really like. It's just fucking mind blowing. Like, I don't know if you ever like got super into biblical studies, but like the way I was taught was that like literally everything in the Old Testament was just written as a metaphor for us, like for us nowadays, that we're supposed to extrapolate all this meaning.
Oh, I was told it was literal.
Metaphor, same thing. Like it's literal, and also it applies to you right now. Like,
yes.
You open up the Bible and you go to a verse, and it's about you. But so like, I'm listening to this podcast, and they're going over the Bible, and like, it's fucking blowing my mind, dude. Because like, the Old Testament is literally just all about how the Jews were like fucking being invaded a million times by like Assyria, Babylon, and Persia. Like, that's everything. Everything that's written in that Bible is people being really pissed off that they're constantly being invaded and wanting to like double down on their identity, stop integrating with the foreigners. That is the Old Testament. It's not something for us nowadays. It's not like a lifelong, long-term, like never-ending moral that we're supposed to cling to. It's literally just like some journal entries from people who were really, really pissed off that people kept invading their fucking country. Knock it the fuck off.
Yeah. It's like there was an agent back then. Somebody was like, hey, we think this religion's going to go over really well. How much money should we sell this for? Oh, it's worth millions of dollars. All right, let's push this.
That's the thing. They weren't pushing that. They were just fucking writing shit down and being like, hey, guys, stop marrying the foreigners. We need to get our country back. And everyone's like, nah, we really like worshiping Asherah and like, this is really fun. And they're like, no, God's going to burn you all down to the ground. And that's basically it. They're just like, it's just like a podcast. It's just like these podcasts, but people just wrote shit down instead. And it's just like, it's completely irrelevant. And it's just so refreshing to know that. Like, I didn't understand any of this because I was taught, like, you read Proverbs and it's like, that stuff is potent stuff to read if you think it's about you, but it's not. It's definitely not about you.
Yeah. And I wrote that down because I am going to look that show up. And I'll be honest, when I first came out, so what happened was I lost my job twice in 1 year, 2 different companies, right? Super depressed. I had to liquidate my 401k to pay for Christmas and pay the bills. And I was super depressed. I started going back to church, weirdly enough, with my parents right around Christmas time. And all of a sudden, I went to a couple of services. January comes around. I'm like, screw it, I'm going back to school. I got offered a job. And then my wife's like, you're still, really pensive. Here, listen to this show. And I listened to it. And I listened to the second episode and the third. By the time I had 4 episodes in one night, I knew there was no way I could be a Christian ever again. And that was Seth Andrews. And, now I don't actually care for, his politics. But back in the day, that's what opened my eyes. And it was the same thing. Seth was going through the Bible debunking different things. They would have people on debunking. That was like part of his ritual to help cleanse himself, make him, how do you get rid of this?
Yeah.
And I think that's extremely important to hear somebody say, hey, look, by the way, there's more people deconverting every day. There's more people coming out and understanding things differently. Yeah. And like you guys, like you say on your show, right? We're all interesting.
Yeah.
And the whole point of life shouldn't be, hey, I want to just research this and live in a bubble. Let's talk to other people. And I think, for me, some of it was I kind of ignored some of that after a while because now I want to argue politics. But, listening to your show and kind of listening to some of your experiences and following some of your diary posts that you all have been posting online.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden I go, man, holy crap. Now all these feelings come back, and you kind of wonder, how did I ever get there? So let's talk about the show that you recently joined.
Yeah, I would love to. It's I'm extremely passionate about it. I have not been this excited about something in a long time. This is everything I was looking for, to be totally honest. Like I was, I've been doing a lot of work on myself over the last few years. Like I had a nervous breakdown in like 2013 and was suicidal for a little while and really needed some help and had to change a lot of things in my life. And since that point, I've been kind of rebuilding myself and finding myself, finding my voice, finding my autonomy. And that ended up looking like getting more help for recovering from religion, because despite having deconverted in my early 20s, it is massively affecting me day to day, like it or not. And so I seek out resources. I seek out resources that resound for me. And I came across Ryan Bell's podcast called Life After God. And I really enjoyed that. And then I listened to an episode that he had where he interviewed another podcaster, Cass Midgley, who again now is the co-host of Everyone's Agnostic, which I'm on. And I just really, it appealed to me. Cass's tone and like the way he spoke about things and the way he saw the world really appealed to me. And so I ended up kind of migrating over to that podcast more than anything, and really, really loved hearing the stories that people shared. And I really liked the dynamic that the hosts had with those people, and the skill that Cass really had to just pull together very complex stories into just very satisfying themes that just kind of was like, yeah, that's what it felt like. Because sometimes as a deconverted person, you don't have that self-awareness or that processing to look back and really be able to articulate what happened and exactly how it was so fucked up. And sometimes finding those words can be so cathartic and validating. And I really got that out of the show.
And the one thing that I really like about, the show too with him is he's very knowledgeable, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because he doesn't just go, let's go the base level. Like some of the podcasts, in the atheist community touch that base level of religion. And that's great, right? That's a good starter. But he actually, I actually was introduced to his show, I think 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the same thing. It's like, oh, this is not something I normally listen to, but the way he draws you in. Yeah. I could see that,
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about it. He really has a skill, and I think he attributes it to being a former pastor. So he's still a pastor, but now he talks about how to move forward in your life as a non-believer carrying baggage from being a believer. And it's just very, very cathartic to have that emotional labor kind of done for you to kind of pull that all together. And so I loved his show and I would listen to it all the time. And I've had podcasts come and go, things that I've liked and let go, but I've always come back to this show and I just love the stories. And eventually I was at a place where there was a year of 2016 where I wanted to do all of the scary things because my panic disorder and anxiety disorder were just getting the best of me. And I just decided, you know what? I just want to face all of my fears, every fucking single one of them. And so I reached out to Cass and to Bob and I was like, so I want to be on your show. And they wrote back, they're like, cool. And then we scheduled a time and I probably should have taken Xanax before the show because I was nervous as fuck. But they interviewed me and it was the first time I got on such a public platform and shared my story. Moreover, having the analysis of going back and forth with Cass and sharing my story was so cathartic. It was the best therapy session ever. It was so helpful for me. And I loved being on the show. And then the next year I came back on again to do a follow-up interview because I'd become polyamorous at that point, and we thought that'd be an interesting story to share. And so I had a fun time sharing that. And then finally, this last October 2018, the Everyone's Agnostic podcast hosted its first retreat in Tennessee, which was mildly triggering if you've ever been to a Christian retreat. I had to step away at times and just to remind myself that I still had autonomy and that I didn't have to do anything I didn't want to do and that this wasn't a Christian retreat. But anyway, point being, I got to meet Cass. I got to meet a lot of the listeners. And I really, really enjoyed it. And Cass was communicating that he was really stressed and overwhelmed with the show and struggling financially and stuff. And I, for a career, am an executive assistant. I'm extremely organized. I'm really good at my job. And I reached out to Cass and I was like, can I help? Can I just be your assistant for free? I'll do it for free. Cause I'm so passionate about this, helping others recover from religion. And I'm passionate also about using my voice because it has not been used nearly enough in my life. And I love to hear myself talk in the best way. And I love sharing my story and I love hearing other people's stories and giving back to them the same thing that I loved, which was giving them a voice and or just letting them hear other people's voices because sometimes that's all people want. So Cass agreed and I took over and he loves me and I'm really good at my job and it's so satisfying. And it didn't take very long before I said, I want to be your co-host. And he said, okay. And so then I jumped on board with that and I've been getting my feet wet and I kind of feel like I finally kind of know what I'm doing. And it's just so fucking satisfying to do 3 interviews a month with these really interesting people who have been through very unique experiences and have gotten out of it somehow and are finding new meaning in their life. And it's always just so inspiring to hear about that. And so that's how I got involved, being the manager and the co-host. And it just every fucking day that I wake up and realize that I'm a part of it, I'm just so happy because this for me is everything that I want, to help other people recover from religion, to talk about what really matters to me anyway. I don't care about traffic. I don't care what day of the week it is, Linda. Like, fuck hump day. Like, I want to talk about, like, my favorite topics are sexuality, death, recovering from religion, polyamory, like anything that you're not supposed to talk about. I love talking about that, and we get the chance to do that a lot on the show. And so I just feel at home, and I feel really happy, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of it and to be working in tandem with Cass. And it's just mind expanding to know more stories and to meet more people, especially to like guest appear on other shows.
But on your side, so you enjoy Everyone's Agnostic. You've joined Cass. You're like, hey, this is the big thing. Tell everybody a little bit about, the show. How about that? We've talked a lot about you, about Cass. Tell everybody about the show and kind of, the format, what they can expect week to week.
Yeah, so it's a pretty simple premise. The show comes out on a bi-monthly basis, so it's every 2 weeks. It used to be weekly, and then Cass had some changes in his responsibilities in his life, and so we've moved it down to twice a month. It's usually a pretty long episode, like an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours. And we tell ourselves that we're compensating for that loss of that 1 week through these extra long episodes. But it is a show where Cass does a monologue that usually is in relation to one of the major themes of the interview. And now that I am a co-host, I have my own monologue after his, which I don't know that I've heard a lot of shows with like 2 monologues in a row. So I'm not super sure like how the listeners are taking that, or they like the variety, or if it seems like overkill. I don't know. I haven't heard from anyone. So, but for now, that is the structure of it. So Cass will talk about whatever's on his mind, and I'll talk about whatever's on my mind. And mine usually involves a lot more swearing and a couple jokes, and his is a lot more serious. But and then it's just for the rest of the period, for about like an hour and a half, we interview someone and we talk about their experiences in religion and their experiences of having left that religion, how that's affected their relationships, and also like now where do they find themselves? Where are they going now? How are they struggling to find meaning in life? What are they working through? What gives them passion, what gives them purpose. And everybody's story is different. We don't interview everyone to hear the same result. And so some stories speak to people more than others, and some stories people find incredibly boring and wish that they'd never spent that time listening to it. But I like that about it, and I remember that as a listener too, just being like, some just really, really hit me in the heart, and some I was like, that was fine, whatever. I mean, that's basically it. It's just a conversation. Cause it's not like, and I can only account for like the last 5 episodes. I've had no say in the ones before that, but I know that previous guests, not all previous guests, call themselves agnostic nor atheist. Some would even still call themselves Christian, but in extremely progressive form. And some, I think there's been like some priests, and like there's a pastor in Canada, Greta Vosper, I believe, that we've interviewed because of her extremely nuanced progressive views in Christianity, which I'm going to be speaking out of my ass now. So if I'm wrong, that's totally on me, and I own that. But I think she like doesn't even believe in God, but she is a pastor, like, and she says that. And like, so it's just like this very nuanced, like I can be Christian and not believe in God sort of thing, which is mind boggling. Yet if you think about it long enough, it kind of makes sense. But so we talk to a mix of people. But mostly, for the most part, people who have deconverted from a faith, and for the most part, people who have deconverted from Christianity. I'd be very intrigued to talk to more people from other religious backgrounds, but for now, it's just we seems to be mostly made of ex-Christians and stuff.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah,
neat.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Marie. Everyone's Agnostic. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was a fun conversation. I don't get to have, usually my co-host is like, yeah, you grew up in religion, blah, blah, blah. And he marvels. We used to do a segment, and I haven't done it in a while. I just don't feel inspired. But we used to do a segment called Shit Chris Used to Believe. Right?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I was the guy that believed the flood was real. But I went so far as to try and scientifically prove it when I was younger.
Oh, my God.
There's a thing called, a dome of water that sealed the earth in. And, if you do the science research behind what would happen if the world was encapsulated by a canopy, you just go, yep, there's no way that could exist. But we were taught that shit. So we used to, I do those things every once in a while. And it's nice to have you on because we were able to kind of reminisce a little bit and talk about the bad, good days, I guess.
Yeah, no, totally. It's validating and it makes you feel a little bit less crazy. This reminds me of I'm seeing this new guy, and he didn't really grow up with religion at all, and anything that I tell him just fucking blows his mind in terms of what I was taught about sexuality, whereas he had parents who were feminist and sex positive, so he's got no hang-ups there at all. And so whenever I tell him what I was taught, he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, yeah, right. And but point being, a couple dates ago, I started playing this game with him called Is This in the Bible or Not? And I would tell him stories because he doesn't know shit about it. And so I would tell him stories okay, there's this story about a prophet or whatever, and some kids called him bald and he was pissed off, so he made some bears eat him. And this guy's like, no, that can't be true. No, it's not true. And I'm like, nope, yep, that's in the Bible. He's like, no way. I'm like, yeah, it's fucked up, dude. It's crazy. A fun game. I love playing that with him.
That's crazy. That's like playing Bible trivia. I try to introduce some of my friends to Bible trivia, and they all hate it. They're like, "Oh, we don't want to play with you. You know half the answers, and none of them are fun." Yeah. I'm okay. I'm not really good at trivia, but I find it fun because it's oh, I actually know these things a lot better. You can ask, my wife, you put her in front of Jeopardy, she can answer half the question. I can't. I don't know any of that stuff. That doesn't come to me. Bible ones, I get most of those right.
Somehow that got ingrained more than everything else, huh?
Yeah, well, it's, the 4 days a week at church and private school upbringing, so it's got to be good for something.
Does it, though?
Obviously not, because I don't make money doing it, so...
Did you make money as an atheist doing Bible trivia?
Yeah.
If that's a job.
I would do that. A heartbeat. Be like, yep, sign me up. I could do it at bars. You could, even better environment.
Yeah. Oh my God, that would be great.
Well, thank you, Marie.
You could do it for Christians. You could do it
for Christian at a church.
Yeah, but you'd pose as a Christian trivia guy, but then all the trivia you would give them would be the really disturbing stuff, and you would deconvert everyone.
We should. There we go. That's a podcast we should start. We'll do it once a month. We'll invite Christians on. Yeah. We won't tell them. We won't lie and say we're not atheists. We'll just be like, yeah, we're questioning and this and that. We'll get a sampling. We'll have them on, and we'll do trivia with ultra disgusting facts.
We could try that. Ultimately, I'm already imagining it, and I'm like, I think that we're just going to end up hitting our heads against the wall because they're all apologetics, and they're going to just be like, well, what God is saying is this, and you're just going to be like, okay, fuck you, we're done with this podcast.
But it would be fun for the first couple of times until they figured it out. They're like, oh, hold on a second.
We'd have a Sacha Baron Cohen issue,
There you go.
People start to recognize us.
Once they figure it out, we're out of luck.
Yeah. Well, it was a good idea, but I guess we're fucked now.
Yeah, we'll just go back to our normal podcast.
Okay. The one where we don't lie to people.
There you go. See? And we're not lying technically because we're being honest on the show right now. And
true.
We'll just post this clip at the end of every show.
Sure. Yeah. If you'd only gone forward in time, you would have known that we were going to lie to you.
You should have Googled us before we started.
Do your research.
Well, Marie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Equally. Thank you.
For everybody that listened tonight, please check out all their links in the description. Everyone's Agnostic. They are anywhere you can grab a podcast, and they even have merch.
We do. We have stickers.
You have stickers, which is more than us.
They're new, yeah.
Thank you so much again, Marie, for joining us.
It's been an honor. See you guys.
And have a good night.
See ya.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
And my blood is on yours, but there are no wounds. I'll take the place of your mistakes. I'll wake the day before it fades.
Now, back to the show.
I don't know what's happening right now. I'm worried.
You don't
I'm
know
worried.
what's happening right now? Hannah, welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all for joining us. That was an amazing segment. And
Yeah.
I'll admit that this show is a little bit longer, and I'll admit that Hannah didn't join us for the interview, but in fairness, Marie and I had a really good conversation. Both of us have similar upbringings, similar belief systems, similar tactics, and it's just very vindicating to some extent that her and I were able to vent through some of our old religious beliefs. But we're back now, as we close the episode out, talking about everybody's favorite part of the show, the quick saves.
Oh yeah. Yep. Just for anybody that's not familiar with our quick save section, it's essentially something throughout the week when you're blowing through the 5 million pages of things in your feed that you see, and you can't quite save one, right? There isn't like a thing where you can go back to it. Reddit has a thing where you can save articles and stuff like that you like to go back to, but like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram don't quite have that feature. And so like something that you see these like, man, that is really cool, and you want to go back at it and take a look at it. In a video game, you can usually quick save to a spot, and then you can go kill everybody in a town or something if you think that's going to be fun, and you realize that that's going to be detrimental towards the main storyline, so you go back to your little quick save and everything is great again. So my quick saves are always relatively interesting. So Chris, did you want to go first? Do you want me to go first this week?
I'll go first. So my quick save of the week was from basically somewhat like a BuzzFeed article called "In a Few Years, Windowless Airplanes Will Give Passengers a Panoramic View of the Sky." And the image that comes up is essentially seats and the outside of the plane. And the first thing my brain thought of was, oh, heck, no way. There's no way I'm getting in a plane that ever promotes
no one knows.
Nope. And it's essentially like they took the outside of the plane, and instead of you seeing a plane, you see the sky. And it's like basically this large panoramic TV. And I get the logic in it. I don't disagree with the logic of understanding how can you create a window to the outside world while you're flying. But
Just
for
a bunch
me,
of cameras on the outside or something.
They don't even get into that. But for me, the idea behind a windowless plane is illogical because it fuels my anxiety. Like for me, this is like, oh, I'm going to get to sit in a seat flying in the sky with no surrounding comfort levels. No way. Thank you anyway. And oh, by the way, this is a heart attack for Tanner waiting to happen. This period.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. If you're on if you're on a big enough airplane, so if you're on a 747 or what is it, 787, I don't know, whichever one has the middle row where you can see windows. There's little round holes in the side of the vehicle you're in, but you can't see through them. So like I could see how that wouldn't be too big of an issue, but I would say that it would be freaky if like you were in some of that new technology where they have flexible TVs where like let's say the camera on the outside of the plane was like doing like a panoramic view, and so the inside of the plane looked like just like a platform, and then it was just sky all the way around. Would be a little freaky. Like all you can see is clouds. That would be trippy. But like I don't know. I don't think it would be too big of an issue for me. But I'm kind of weird like that.
Yeah. For me, it's a 100% no go, and it's kind of funny because I posted it, and I had people that I've argued with about the Trump administration like comment on it and be like, "Yep, we agree with you. This is illogical. Nobody should do this." And for me, it's just an anxiety point of view, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's the
you have to have some kind of
holy
physical
crap
connection to reality.
Yeah, like I don't have an ability to want to see the outside while I fly. For me, it's like I get in an airplane, I sit in my seat. You should make airplanes big enough so that I'm comfortable in my seat, which they don't. And then let me sleep. Let me just sleep the whole ride. Like I have anti-anxiety drugs I could take when I fly. And like the other thing is let me get high and just sleep the whole time. Like I
what does it matter if you have windows then? If you're just looking to black out for the entire trip, who
you're
cares?
Right. Exactly. I agree with you, man. I don't need the windows, man. For me, it's just about how can I get in this and get off this and not die. And I understand the logic in the fact that the majority of people die in car accidents versus airplane accidents. Yeah. I get that. But it doesn't matter. My phobia would be fueled by this, and it would be a lot easier if I were able to just say, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to relax, I don't need to get up, I don't need to worry about if the whole interior of the cabin looks like the outside air. No thank you, sir.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, it might be a little bit more structurally sound to survive the, 3-4 minute fall out of the sky if you're on your way down. But I don't know. I don't.
It doesn't make me feel better.
Once you're up there, dude, I don't know. It's not really gonna matter. Windows, no windows. You're gonna be a pepperoni pizza on the bottom of the landing site. But anyway, so my quick save is going to be a little more fun than that, but maybe a little bit less. I don't know. The topic that I found here is that it's been almost 100 years since America's 1% had this much wealth. And this is something we talked about a few times on here, but like the reason why I wanted to make this my quick save is because this is a number, something that I want to remember when I see it. And so like the U.S. wealth concentration seems to have returned to levels last seen during the Roaring '20s. And we all know exactly what happened right after the Roaring '20s. Basically, this huge inflation of cooking the books that happened in 1929 before Wall Street's crash unleashed a Great Depression. The top 0.1% richest adults share a total household wealth that was close to 25%. And that rate plunged in the 30s to below 10%, and then in the 70s and 80s, and they're currently at 20% right now. And so the last time the income gaps have been where they are is roughly 100 years ago, and we're closing in on it pretty quickly. In 2009, it was at the jobless rate 4%, which is just off a 49-year low. So everyone's working. We know everybody's been hearing about the unemployment rate being super low. Trump's been saying that it's the greatest thing. African American unemployment is as low as it's ever been. Yeah, well, if you're paying them minimum wage and they can't afford their apartments, how is this any better? So, like in the end, what they're talking about is the total amount of income coming in, and it says that the Economic Policy Institute, a left-leaning Washington, D.C. think tank, estimates America's top earning 1% took in 22% of the national income. The organization said in 1928, 23.9% of the income went to the 1%. So almost they only need 1.9% more to meet the same relative amounts they had in 1928, right before the Great Depression. But the income inequality gap was there, so it's freaky. It's something you need to think about, and you should make sure you have all of your finances in order in a place where if some rich guy's decisions burn down the house, that maybe they don't take you with them.
Yeah, because that would be horrible if they could take you with you. Right.
That's the whole thing. It's scary, man. Like, you don't want to lose everything. So, like, people having all their money in real estate, in your housing, then make sure you're in a good place if you're doing that, and make sure you don't have too far of a mortgage so you're overextending yourself in case the market crashes and you're still stuck with that same apartment, the same payment. I know there's all kinds of stuff that happened from the last recession that really people should pay attention to, and this, I think, is a big indicator as to the short-term future of this country.
Exactly. And if you don't pay attention to where you're at or how it's going or what we're going to do, the problem becomes is you're going to get screwed in the long run. And we don't say this to be callous. We say this to try and help educate people, because the two of us believe
scary, man.
Society could be more socialistic, and we're not. We're in this like neocon state, and the sooner we get away from this and move to a more progressive Democrat, the sooner we'll be able to help more people. But you got to make that choice, folks. You got to make the choice of where do you want to land, where do you want to fit, how do you want to be a part of this society. And as we close, for me, that's the big thing, right? It's been 100 years, and America's wealth for the 1% has grown so much that we don't realize it. The wife and I talk about this, and we talk about, are we middle class or not? And in my opinion, based on the amount of kids we have and our income level, we're barely middle class. Back in the day, you could make 40 grand a year and you could be middle class. But nowadays, you got to make 100 grand a year with the amount of kids I have to be a middle class citizen. And people don't realize that. And if you want to help change the world, you're going to help vote and fix laws that punish the illogical middle class and support the low income folks in your district. With that being said, we're wrapping up an episode. Thank you so much for joining us on Cellar Door Skeptics. You can tune in every week at Wednesday morning, which is when we release the episodes.
Yeah,
not
usually.
Tuesdays.
It used to be Tuesdays, but
now we're Wednesday mornings. But you can join in with us Wednesday mornings, or you can catch us if you want to subscribe to Patreon a day early for the episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all, and have a wonderful night.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today, because we bring the discussion with the sources.